So Jojo Rabbit has recently gotten its release in the UK, and I, as well as all the other people in the jolly old United Kingdom and Europe, have gotten our grubby, scone-stained hands on it. I've been a fan of Taika Waititi's work for a while now, mainly due to films of his such as Boy and What We Do in the Shadows. And thanks to the recent success of Thor Ragnarok, Waititi has blown up into the mainstream. He's in that new Star Wars show, is one of the big directors working at Marvel Studios, has been cast in multiple upcoming films, and has been given much more creative liberty on his future projects by him being given a higher budget to work with. This has allowed Waititi to create his lifelong passion project, that being Jojo Rabbit, a World War II and Holocaust satire. Waititi is a Jewish Maori man from New Zealand, therefore he really wanted to make a film about the Holocaust, tearing down Hitler and the Nazis' ideology and worldview. When asked why Waititi chose to play Hitler, he simply said, "It's simple. What's a better fuck you to the guy?" And that pretty much encapsulates everything this film stands for. It doesn't seek to present Nazi Germany as a grim, dark place where you see oppression at every turn. Instead, Waititi chose to present it as a seemingly vibrant, happy place. There's a thick layer of darkness and misery swept underneath its surface by the Nazis. The Nazis aren't given much ceremony in this film. Most are presented as incompetent, ignorant, and blind to make them more subject to ridicule and tearing down any kind of respect or tact given to presenting them, which, as Waititi said, is a perfect fuck you to Hitler. But somebody didn't like Jojo Rabbit due to them failing to catch on to the obvious themes of the film, instead labelling it as irresponsible and offensive. That person being Grace Randolph, where she's better known on the web beyond the trailer. Grace Randolph makes what I assume to be reviews? Nerd theories and trailer breakdowns? That's not important. What is important is a reaction video she did to Jojo Rabbit's trailer before its release, as well as a review she did after its release.
Oh god.
Both of which are bafflingly presented and show just how little she understands the overall point of the film. So that simultaneously break down her review and her confidence as a human being, so I can bully her off the internet now that my patience has reached boiling point.
Jojo Rabbit definitely has some spectacular, powerful moments. There's no denying that. But at the end of the day, making a whimsical movie about a young Nazi and the Holocaust is as inappropriate as making a whimsical movie about the young son of slave owners. And the internet, of course, would explode if anyone did that.
Just because a film is based around a horrific subject matter, doesn't mean you can't make a film poking fun at the subject or having a much different tone than what you'd anticipate. For example, Four Lions is a comedy based around an extremist Muslim terrorist cell, which, as we all know, terrorism is horrible, and terror attacks are extremely tragic. However, at no point does the film come across as distasteful or upsetting to sufferers or tragedies. It's just the setup for a comedic situation which they managed to get a lot of laughs out of.
Shut up, mate, because I tell you, your little brain cell might go off now and again, but if your hands even go to move, if you try setting up the Islamic State of Tinsley again, going to university lectures, open your big mouth, buying some more silver nitrate from Amazon, I'm gonna rip your plugs out. Not if you're not here, you won't.
But disregarding that, the fact that Jojo Rabbit starts off as a whimsical story about the Holocaust is a direct message of the film and the intent of Waititi. He wanted Germany in the way Jojo sees it to be a reflection of what life was like for young Germans back then. Everything is all bright and colourful, everyone is dressed very fashionable, triumphant uplifting songs permeate throughout the film's soundtrack, and there's a lot of bright, vibrant colours taking up the look of the set. It's a metaphor for how Hitler and the Nazis brainwashed the youth, filling them with lies and the feeling of patriotism to make them docile, and not acknowledge the horrible crimes that were being committed in Germany each day. However, as Jojo begins to open his eyes, this tone and aesthetic drastically shifts. Therefore, this choice isn't inappropriate, but purposeful. Your example of a whimsical story about the son of a slave owners could possibly be appropriate and tasteful if it was executed similarly to Jojo Rabbit.
So that so many people are okay with blurring the lines of the Holocaust and anti-Semitism, well, I find it very disturbing, and it shows that many people are not taking the frightening return of anti-Semitism these days. I tweeted just recently about seeing a man in a yarmulke right before my eyes being almost beat up in the streets of New York in 2019. The fact that people are like, oh, it's okay if we kind of put a happy face on this, right? I mean, that's really, truly frightening. And the fact, because again, if they made that movie about a slave owner's son, the internet would explode, rightfully so. But here everyone's like, oh, I like Taika Waititi, let's take a look at it.
Just because there's a lot of political tension in the world right now doesn't mean that the film should puss out and not do anything that's based on the controversial issue. In fact, I'd say we need films like Jojo Rabbit more than ever. A film that can wriggle ideas into your brain and make you think, make you want to change something when you see parallels between the world of the film and real life. I went to see the film with my mother because I am ever the mama's boy, and when we left the cinema, my mum told me she couldn't stop thinking about what life was like in Nazi Germany, and how disturbing she found the way children were brainwashed. And that's an important thing. It's the kind of thing we need more of in cinema, instead of expecting nothing from the audience and only offering a way for them to shut their brain off and forget for a couple of hours. We should encourage films that challenge the audience and make them think. That's not to imply that a film offering an escape isn't helpful. Grace says it's frightening to put a happy face on such an issue, but I couldn't disagree more. If the film made no attempt to criticise the Nazis and all the humour was at the expense of Jews and whatnot, then maybe she'd have a leg to stand on. But the film doesn't. Almost every character who's a Nazi is presented as some kind of idiot. I mean, just look at Hitler in this. He's a buffoon. What good does it do to give the Nazis power? In fact, I think it does more to laugh at them than to present them as monsters that can never leave our minds or that we can never talk about. Grace seems to hold this belief that any kind of likability associated with any character who bears a swastika to be dangerous and is something that could potentially influence people to become Nazis.
Okay, well, in Taika Waititi's defense, the movie looks very well made, and I think well intentioned. I really like the cast, but I think that's part of the problem. The more likable the movie is, the more I get concerned, because none of that should have any likability associated with it whatsoever. Because if you leave even an inch, someone can misconstrue that inch, right? I don't want people taking the wrong message from the movie and using it to support causes that, of course, we're all against.
I'm going to be as blunt as possible here, but if you think that any kind of likability associated with Nazis would make people want to become Nazis, then you're a fucking idiot. There are a lot of stupid people in the world, but I doubt anyone watching Jojo Rabbit would think that the Nazi cause is one they should join just because they liked a few of the characters. If you have common sense or know anything about the Nazis, which pretty much everyone does, then you're not going to be persuaded to join them if you don't already have Nazi views. I find it incredibly pretentious to suggest that you're so smart that you think anyone who isn't you is going to walk out of Jojo Rabbit indoctrinated into the Nazi cause because some characters were halfway likable. As long as you have any sort of critical capacity, then you won't be so easily swayed. Maybe if the film itself is pushing some kind of anti-Semitic Nazi message, then it's valid to suggest the film is dangerous, but it isn't. It's literally labelled as an anti-hate satire. Most people can discern right from wrong, and it's ignorant of you to suggest that the mainstream audience are brain-dead sheep who will be brainwashed by having a character who happens to be in the Hitler Youth have motivations for why he believes what he believes. I really despise that argument, Grace.
Wes Anderson style tone, the film's unwillingness to truly go there, except for maybe 1.5 characters, right?
I'm not quite sure what you mean by the film doesn't truly go there, unless you mean it wasn't Schindler's List and exposed the audience to all of the Nazis' crimes. And Schindler's List is a great movie, but it's going for something completely different in terms of messaging and tone. Jojo Rabbit is a comedy, so judge it as a comedy. It needs to have levity. It's also a 12A here in the UK, meaning a lot of kids will watch it, so constantly shoving in miserable imagery would really be unfitting. And the movie does have some really sad and depressing scenes, 2 of which got a tear out of me. It's tasteful in its approach. The imagery of just seeing the shoes of Jojo's mother dangling from the feet of her lifeless body is instantly more impactful and tasteful than seeing her brutal hanging outright.
Right? I did not like what it said about what Americans did at the end of the war. I was like, whoa, back that up. Or, like with proof. And I was very upset about that. I was like, you won't show the Nazis as truly evil, really, but you'll show Americans that way? Or you're saying Americans aren't that different from Nazis? I was like, wow, Taika Waititi, what the heck?
There's nothing more to say here other than it was a war, and when the Allies invaded and occupied Germany, they did in fact punish high-ranking German soldiers and officials. That's war. You don't see them committing atrocities of any kind other than killing people who were shooting at them. Like, who cares? If you want context, read a history book. Also, they aren't presenting the Americans as truly evil. They're just not the focus of the film, or even the scene. The Nazis are. And a scene such as the one you're talking about is crucial to Jojo's development, as it shows him that the lie the Nazis tell him, that war is good and it is great to fight in, isn't true.
But then also, I think that Jojo never shows any personal growth at the end of the movie.
This is just blatantly incorrect. Jojo does develop in a ton of ways from beginning to end. He realizes everything he thought was true was a lie. He befriends a Jewish person, someone he thought was a monster. He discovers the horror of war, and at the end of the film he literally renounces Hitler. That's a lot of personal growth, and there are several more examples of his development, such as his costume change from a Hitler Youth uniform to a more casual and relaxed clothing.
I like to claim that this is no different than the work of Mel Brooks or Charlie Chaplin, but that was pure satire. Whereas Jojo Rabbit is actually a fully dramatic film. In fact, Taika Waititi's role as Hitler, again a role that nobody else in Hollywood would touch, so he had to take it on himself. I told you that first. He has confirmed that recently in a Hollywood Reporter interview. But anyway, his role is even quite small as Hitler. This is largely a dramatic movie about Jojo Rabbit, who again does not change.
It's actually a comedy with dramatic elements mixed in. You're twisting what the film is to suit your own narrative, that it fails to be a satire here, Grace. If you watch the trailer, count the ratio of jokes and comedic moments to drama, it would be pretty decisive as to what the film is marketing itself as. Also, if you're saying it's a drama, let's have a look at the definition of satire.
The use of humor, irony, exaggeration, or ridicule to expose and criticize people's stupidity or vices, particularly in the context of contemporary politics and other topical issues.
I'd say that perfectly describes Taika Waititi's role as Hitler. I mean, just look at this scene here.
They call me a scared rabbit.
Let them say whatever they want. People used to say a lot of nasty things about me. Oh, this guy's a lunatic. Oh, look at that psycho. He's gonna get us all killed.
I feel that the movie cheats quite a bit. For instance, Jojo is supposed to be horribly scarred by a grenade early on in the film. Compelling scene, when that happens. And he calls himself a monster afterwards. But he looks totally fine. I'm like, why didn't you go all the way and actually make him scarred? It was odd to me.
This is a clear example that Grace doesn't understand the history and society of Nazi Germany. The Nazis were obsessed with looks and peak physical condition. They didn't want the Aryan race to look weak or less than the perfect human. In fact, SS officers famously went into hospitals to execute patients or make people who were physically or mentally disabled sterile. To Jojo, his mark makes it so that he isn't the perfect Aryan, which several characters frequently mock him for.
Taika Waititi wants Jojo to be this little Nazi, but he doesn't have the guts to give him Nazi parents. Instead, of course, both of Jojo's parents are freedom fighters, which is never really truly explored. It's like I guess Taika Waititi's trying to do this all from the eyes of a twisted 10-year-old boy, which I don't really think works, especially when that little boy, as I said, isn't that likable character and never actually changes. But even though Jojo's parents are freedom fighters, for some reason, they decide to keep it from their son and let him be not just a Nazi, but a passionate Nazi. I don't understand what parents would allow that hate to fester and twist their son's psyche, especially if they themselves know better. That just seemed really weird to me.
This section pisses me off so much. It's another example of Grace not bothering to understand history, context, and the point of the film. Of course, Jojo's parents didn't want to tell their son about their freedom fighting. For one, any forms of resistance against the Reich was illegal. It could result in being sent to concentration camps or even being killed. In order to fully control their citizens, the Nazis had people in local areas keep surveillance on each person, including spying on them in their house. Also, Hitler knew the importance of getting the youth on his side. It was made a legal requirement for children to attend the Hitler Youth, and they had to attend schools which taught Nazi-approved subjects such as eugenics and what a traitor to the Nazi was. In addition, Jojo has been fully indoctrinated into the Hitler Youth, at least that's what his mother thinks. If she told him, then he would have mentioned this to somebody. Jojo is terrible at keeping secrets, the film shows us this. There is literally nothing Jojo's parents could have done to stop him from supporting the Nazis. If they did, they would have been either arrested or killed.
Finally, on the subject of cheating, Taika Waititi wants to show how children were thrust into World War II, into situations that were not appropriate for children. Yet he never puts any of those children, the main children, in real danger. And that really just makes the whole thing seem like some kind of twisted school play, which I had a problem with as well.
They literally fight a war in the end, Grace. They show children dying. They show them dead. One of them gets turned into a fucking suicide bomber. The reason Jojo stays at home is because he got blown up by a grenade. They do put children in danger. What the fuck did you watch?
Finally, in the bad section, having to look at multiple drawings of Jews with horns and animal bodies and being on leashes and stuff, it's just really disturbing. And they really focus on that. And again, considering what's going on today, I have no idea why Taika Waititi would want to put that out into the world.
It's almost as if this is a film about Nazis. I never would have guessed for there to be anti-Semitic imagery in a film about the Holocaust. It's an anti-hate satire about World War II and Nazi Germany. I seriously don't know what you expected from this. That's pretty much it from me in this video. I've never seen a review that misunderstands, misinterprets, and ignores so much of the film as much as this one. Grace fails to understand any of the points Waititi is trying to make with this film, and wants any kind of substance or nuance taken out of the film for the sake of making it more cliche and black and white. It comes across that she doesn't want art that challenges or asks the audience to think about what they're seeing. Which she clearly didn't.
Either way, I've been your host, That's Over George. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all later. Bye!